A man noticed a moving blanket on the street. What he found beneath shocked the galaxy on a cool, breezy evening. The lights of the city flickered against the growing darkness. The streets were filled with the usual hustle and bustle of urban life, people chatting, cars honking, and the soft hum of hovercrafts flying overhead. The world seemed alive, yet something about it felt strangely empty, as though the pulse of the city was missing its rhythm. Alex Carter walked down the street, his jacket pulled tight against the cool air. A routine evening, nothing unusual. He was just on his way home after another long day at the office. A regular man with a regular job in a regular world. But tonight, something caught his attention. There, near the corner of an alley, a blanket moved. At first, he thought it was a trick of the wind or maybe some stray piece of trash tumbling down the sidewalk. But as he took a few more steps, he realized the blanket was not being moved by the wind. It was shifting on its own. Alex slowed his pace. Something felt off. The blanket wasn't just fluttering or shifting. There was something beneath it, something that didn't belong. He glanced around the street, but it was late, and the area was mostly empty. The few people nearby didn't seem to notice, their faces illuminated by the glow of streetlights as they passed by, too busy with their own thoughts. Curiosity stirred in him. He took a few steps closer, each one filled with hesitation. He had no reason to be suspicious. After all, blankets weren't unusual. They were just simple objects meant for warmth. Yet this one moved too much. Alex reached the spot and stopped, unsure if he should get any closer. He bent down slightly, trying to peer beneath the blanket. He expected to see a stray animal, maybe a person taking a nap, but what he saw instead shocked him. A pair of large, shimmering eyes stared back at him from under the blanket. They were unlike anything he had ever seen. They were impossibly big for a human, glowing faintly in the dim light. But it wasn't just the eyes that caught his attention. It was the face. The skin beneath the blanket wasn't the color of any human he knew. It was a pale, almost translucent blue, soft and smooth, yet unnaturally perfect. A small, delicate nose and lips completed the face, and the child's gaze seemed to penetrate deep into Alex's soul. His heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a child, this was something else entirely. Before he could react, the girl beneath the blanket spoke. Her voice was soft, barely a whisper, but it carried an urgent tone. "Please help me." Alex froze. His mind raced. What was happening here? Who was this child? She didn't look human, yet she spoke English. Could it be a costume? A prank? But no, those eyes couldn't be faked. And the strange, alien features were too real to be a disguise. The girl's fragile hand emerged from beneath the blanket. She looked up at Alex with fear and hope mixed in her expression. "Please, don't leave me here, they're coming." The words struck him with a sudden chill. "Who's coming?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The girl didn't answer immediately. She seemed to be searching his face, her eyes calculating, measuring him. Alex could feel his heart thudding in his chest. He knew he should walk away, but something about her, something deep inside him, made him want to help. He couldn't just leave her there. Without another thought, he crouched down to her level. "It's okay. You're safe now," he said, not entirely sure he believed it himself. He reached out, lifting the blanket enough to see her face more clearly. The girl didn't pull back or flinch. Instead, she stared at him with an almost pleading look in her eyes, as if trusting him with everything she had. "Where are you from?" Alex asked, trying to make sense of it all. The girl hesitated, then slowly said, "I'm from far away, not from here. I don't belong." Alex wasn't sure what to say. He could hear the uncertainty in her voice and the sadness. She wasn't like anyone he'd ever met, but that didn't matter now. She was alone, and she needed help. He glanced around. The street was still quiet, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him, something unseen, lurking in the shadows. He didn't know why, but a sense of urgency grew within him. He had to act fast. "Let's get you somewhere safe," he said, standing up and offering his hand. "Come with me." The girl didn't hesitate. She placed her delicate hand in his, and together they walked down the street. Alex's mind raced. Who was she? Where had she come from? And why was she hiding under a blanket in the middle of the city? As they walked, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something big. Something that would change his life, and maybe the world, forever. Alex led the girl through the quiet streets of the city, his heart still racing from the strange encounter. Her hand, though small and delicate, felt unusually warm in his grip. The girl, who had introduced herself as Lyra, didn't say much as they walked. Her eyes remained fixed on the ground in front of her, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and fear. He glanced down at her, wondering just how much she understood about the world around her. She was clearly not from Earth. Her appearance, her mannerisms, everything about her screamed that she was different. But there was also something about her that made Alex want to protect her, to keep her safe from whatever danger she was running from. As they walked through the darkened streets, Alex couldn't help but notice the way people moved past them without even a glance. The city had always been a place of anonymity, where people went about their lives, not paying much attention to others. But tonight, something felt off. There was an unsettling quietness in the air, as if the entire city was holding its breath. He shook off the feeling. The most important thing right now was getting Lyra somewhere safe. He had no idea who she was really running from, or what she was truly capable of, but one thing was certain. There was danger following her, and he didn't want to find out what it would do to her if they got caught. They reached Alex's apartment building after what felt like an eternity. His mind was spinning with questions, but he kept them to himself for now. The last thing Lyra needed was more confusion. He had to make sure she was okay first, then he could figure out what was going on. As they entered his apartment, Alex closed the door behind them and locked it. It was a small, modest place, nothing fancy, just a simple two-bedroom with a living room, kitchen, and a bathroom. The walls were lined with old bookshelves, filled with novels and trinkets he'd collected over the years. It was a comfortable space, though nothing special. The kind of place where someone could get lost in their own thoughts and forget about the rest of the world. Lyra, however, seemed to take in everything with wide eyes, as though she had never seen a human home before. She didn't speak immediately, but her gaze darted around the room, taking in every detail. The soft hum of the city outside was muffled by the thick walls, and the faint glow of the city lights reflected off the windows, casting a pale light across the room. Alex motioned for her to sit on the couch while he went to the kitchen. "You must be hungry," he said, trying to break the silence. He wasn't sure what to offer her. He had a few snacks and some leftovers, but he didn't know if she even ate the same kind of food as humans. Still, he figured it was worth a try. As he rummaged through the fridge, Lyra sat quietly on the couch, her hands folded in her lap. Alex could feel her eyes on him, but he didn't look up. He wasn't sure what to say. He had so many questions, but he didn't want to overwhelm her. Not yet. Finally, he decided to start with something simple. "Where are you from, Lyra?" he asked, his voice gentle. She didn't respond immediately, and for a moment Alex wondered if she had heard him. But then, in a soft voice, she spoke. "I'm from a place far away," she said, her tone almost distant. "From beyond the stars, beyond what you can imagine, my people. We come from a world that no longer exists." Alex turned, his curiosity piqued. He set the food down on the counter and walked over to the couch, sitting across from her. "Your people, what happened to them?" Lyra's gaze flickered for a moment, and Alex could see the sadness in her eyes. "They were destroyed," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "By an empire that seeks to control everything. They came to our world and they killed everyone. My people are all gone." The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. He couldn't imagine what it must be like to lose everything, to watch an entire civilization fall apart. It seemed like something out of a science fiction story, except it was happening right in front of him. This girl, this alien child, was the last of her kind. "I'm sorry," Alex said, his voice thick with emotion. "But if you're the last one, how are you still here?" "Why didn't they?" He trailed off, unsure of how to finish the question. Lyra's expression grew darker. "They want me," she said simply. "I'm the last of my kind and they want me for what I am, for what I can do." Alex furrowed his brow. "What do you mean? What can you do?" Lyra hesitated before answering. "I have power, the power to control energy, to shape it, manipulate it." She looked down at her hands as though considering something. "My people. We could use it to protect ourselves, to build, to create. But the Empire. They want to use it to destroy, to control everything." Alex sat back, stunned. He had heard of powers beyond human understanding, but he had never imagined something like this. The ability to control energy. It was beyond anything he could comprehend. "Why are they after you?" he asked, his voice tight with concern. "What do they want with you?" "They want to use my power," Lyra replied softly. "They want me to help them conquer the galaxy, to bend everyone to their will." Alex swallowed hard. This was far bigger than anything he had ever expected. It wasn't just a matter of helping a lost alien child. It was a matter of stopping an empire from taking over everything. "So what happens now?" he asked, the weight of the situation settling in. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of fear and determination. "Now, we wait. They're coming. And when they find me, they won't stop until they have me." Alex stood up, pacing across the room as he tried to wrap his head around everything Lyra had told him. His mind raced with the enormity of it all. How had he gone from a regular guy with a normal life to being involved in something so massive, so dangerous? He had no idea what to do, but one thing was clear. He wasn't going to let Lyra face this alone. "I won't let them get you," he said, his voice firm with resolve. Lyra didn't say anything, but he could see the glimmer of hope in her eyes. She didn't have to say a word. Alex knew what she was thinking. She was alone. And now she wasn't anymore. The days following Lyra's arrival in Alex's apartment were a blur of uncertainty and tension. The city around them continued its usual rhythm: busy streets, endless traffic, and the hum of machines filling the air. But Alex couldn't escape the feeling that everything had changed. He had become part of something far greater than he ever could have imagined, and the weight of it pressed down on him every day. Alex did his best to keep Lyra calm and hidden. They stayed in his apartment, only venturing out when absolutely necessary. The girl was quiet, withdrawn even, as if she were waiting for something, waiting for the danger to find them. Alex had no idea what to expect. He only knew that Lyra's presence was a beacon for something far beyond his understanding, something dangerous. He kept asking himself how this all could have happened. Just days ago, he was a regular man, working a regular job, living a regular life. Now, he was hiding an alien girl from an empire that controlled entire galaxies. There were nights when he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what would happen if the people looking for Lyra did indeed find her. What could he do? He had no training for this, no weapons, no allies. Just a small apartment and his own will to protect someone who had no one else. Every time Lyra spoke, he heard the fear in her voice. She told him bits and pieces of her past, of the destruction of her homeworld, the fall of her people. But she never spoke much about the empire that destroyed everything. It was as if even mentioning their name brought a shadow over her heart. And every time she mentioned her power, that strange, terrifying ability to manipulate energy, Alex felt a chill. What was it about her that made her so important? Why did they want her so badly? One evening, as Alex prepared dinner, Lyra spoke up from the couch, her voice low and distant. "They're getting closer," she said, her eyes focused on the window. Alex turned around, his heart skipping a beat. "Who's getting closer?" Lyra didn't answer immediately. She just sat there, her gaze fixed on the street outside. The city was quiet, the night air still. It was almost peaceful, but Alex couldn't shake the sense of unease that was growing inside him. "They've found us, haven't they?" he asked, his voice tight with worry. Lyra nodded slowly, her fingers tightening into fists. "They're here. I can feel them." Alex's heart raced. The shadows, the group she had mentioned before, the ones who were hunting her, they were close. Too close. And the way she spoke about them with such certainty made it clear that they had methods beyond anything Alex had ever seen. They weren't just looking for her, they were tracking her. It was only a matter of time before they showed up at his door. He quickly turned away from the kitchen, setting the pan down. "We need to leave. Now." Lyra shook her head, her eyes darkening. "It's no use. They will find us. No matter where we go, they'll always find me." Alex's mind raced. He had to protect her, but how? Where could they go? He didn't have the resources, the connections. He was just one man, trying to do what was right in a situation that felt entirely out of his control. Lyra stood up and walked over to him. Her small figure was almost haunting in the dim light of the apartment. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm the last of my kind. If they get me, they will use my power to destroy everything, to control everything. The galaxy will fall." Alex stared at her, the gravity of her words sinking in. She wasn't just a victim, she was a key. A powerful, dangerous key that could unlock a force capable of changing the fate of the entire universe. "What do you want me to do?" Alex asked, his voice almost a whisper. "How can I help you?" Lyra's eyes softened, her fear giving way to something else, something deeper. "You already are," she said quietly. "By protecting me, you're helping more than you know, but we need to move. We can't stay here." Alex looked around the small apartment. It was the only place he'd known for years, a safe haven in his otherwise ordinary life. But now it was a trap. The walls felt like they were closing in. There was no safety here. "We can't stay here," Alex repeated, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "But where do we go?" "I have a place," Lyra said, her voice calm now, though the fear still lingered in her eyes. "It's not far, but we'll have to move fast." Alex nodded, pulling on his jacket and grabbing his keys. It was the middle of the night, and the streets were quieter than usual. The silence was almost eerie, as if the city itself knew something was about to happen. He moved quickly, not saying much, his mind still spinning with questions. Where was this safe place Lyra spoke of? How would it help them escape the shadows? And more importantly, how did she know they were coming? As they stepped out into the cold night, Alex glanced over at Lyra. She walked beside him, her head down, her steps purposeful. She didn't seem afraid. Not now, at least. But Alex knew better than to think she wasn't terrified on the inside. The streets outside were eerily quiet, the usual buzz of traffic absent. It felt as though the city had been emptied, leaving only the two of them to move through its hollow streets. The air was thick with tension, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He kept his eyes peeled for anything unusual, any sign that someone was out there, following them. Lyra suddenly stopped, causing Alex to pause as well. She turned to face him, her expression serious. "We have to be careful," she warned. "They've been tracking me for a long time. They won't stop until they have me." "I won't let them take you," Alex said, his voice firm. Lyra looked up at him, and for the first time there was a small flicker of hope in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly, "but we need to keep moving. They're close." Without another word, she turned and started walking again, and Alex followed. The quiet of the night seemed to grow louder as they walked, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the empty street. They reached the edge of the city, and as Lyra led him down an alley, Alex noticed the change in the air. It was heavier now, as though something was waiting. Lyra's steps grew faster and Alex followed, his heart racing. Finally, they stopped in front of an old, dilapidated building. It looked abandoned, its windows shattered and its walls covered in grime. It was hardly the kind of place you would expect to find safety, but then again, nothing about this situation made sense. "This is it," Lyra said. "We'll be safe here for now." Alex glanced at the building. It seemed like the last place anyone would look for them. It was the perfect hiding spot, but as he stepped inside, a feeling of dread washed over him. Something wasn't right. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as the door creaked closed behind them. "Stay close," Lyra whispered, her voice tight with anxiety. Alex nodded, his mind racing. He didn't know what was waiting for them inside, but one thing was clear: the shadows were closing in. And no matter how safe this place seemed, they wouldn't be safe for long. The air in the abandoned building felt thick with silence. The walls were covered in dust, and the floor creaked under their feet as Alex followed Lyra deeper inside. The place had the smell of neglect, old wood, rust, and something faintly metallic, as if it had been unused for years. Alex's heart pounded in his chest, a nervous rhythm that matched the quickness of his breathing. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every creak of the building, every shadow in the corner of his eye made him jump. But Lyra moved forward without hesitation, her pace steady and determined. She seemed calm, too calm, like this place was somehow familiar to her. Alex could see the way her eyes scanned every corner of the room, every crack in the walls. She knew something he didn't. "Are we safe here?" Alex asked, his voice barely a whisper. He didn't want to seem weak, but the uncertainty gnawed at him. They'd barely escaped the city, and now they were in a strange building, surrounded by who knows what. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She reached out and pushed aside a piece of rotting wood, revealing a hidden doorway. "We'll be safe for now," she said, her voice soft but steady. "But we can't stay here long. They will find us eventually. I can feel them coming." Alex's stomach twisted. Who were they? And why couldn't he understand how Lyra seemed to know so much about them? She wasn't just an innocent alien girl anymore. There was more to her than she was letting on, and Alex needed to know what that was. She stepped through the doorway, and Alex followed, finding himself in a small, dimly lit room. The walls were lined with old crates and pieces of broken machinery. The only light came from a flickering overhead bulb. There was something unsettling about it, like they were underground or in some forgotten part of the world. "This is where we'll hide for now," Lyra said, taking a seat on a stack of crates. "The shadows won't look here. They'll be focused on finding me in the city. We have time, maybe a few hours at best." Alex leaned against the wall, his mind racing. He didn't want to press her too much, but the questions were there, swirling around in his head. What was she hiding? What had she not told him? "So how do you know they're coming?" Alex asked, his voice soft but full of curiosity. "How do you feel them?" Lyra looked up at him, her eyes heavy with something Alex couldn't quite name, regret maybe or sorrow. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "I can sense energy," she said quietly. "I was born with the ability to feel it, to control it. It's like a sixth sense, one that connects me to everything around me, living things, machines, even the air itself. And the shadows, they have a special kind of energy. It's different from anything I've felt before, cold, calculating, and I can feel them getting closer." Alex nodded slowly, trying to make sense of what she was saying. He'd never heard of anything like this before. It sounded impossible, like something out of a science fiction book. But looking at Lyra, knowing what she had been through, he couldn't deny that something extraordinary was happening. "So, what happens when they find us?" Alex asked. "What do they want with you?" Lyra's expression darkened, and for the first time, Alex saw the weight of fear in her eyes. She looked away from him, focusing on the distant shadows in the corners of the room. "They want to use me," she said softly. "They want to use my power to destroy entire worlds, to conquer civilizations. The shadows work for the Empire, the one that wiped out my people. They've been hunting me for years." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. An empire that destroyed an entire race. And now they were after Lyra. The magnitude of it was too much to comprehend. "But why you?" Alex asked, trying to piece it all together. "Why is your power so important? Lyra's gaze met his, and there was a strange intensity in her eyes. "Because I'm the last of my kind," she said, her voice firm. "I'm the only one left who can wield this kind of power, and the Empire, they know that. They need me to fuel their war machines to destroy those who resist them, but I won't let them." Alex felt his chest tighten as he listened to her words. She wasn't just a victim. She was a weapon that could either save or destroy entire worlds depending on who controlled her. And now she was in his care. It was both an honor and a burden he hadn't asked for. "Then we have to stop them," Alex said, his voice stronger than he felt. "We have to protect you. We can't let them get their hands on you." Lyra shook her head, her expression softening for a moment. "It's not that simple," she said. "If they catch me, they'll use my power against you, against everything you know. I've seen what they can do. They're not just looking for me, they want to destroy everything. The galaxy, the universe, they want it all." Alex swallowed hard. The stakes were higher than he could ever imagine. But in that moment, as he looked at Lyra, he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't walk away. No matter what it took, he couldn't let her face this alone. "I won't let them destroy everything," Alex said firmly. "We'll find a way to fight back. We'll figure out a way to stop them." Lyra smiled faintly, a ghost of a smile, but it was enough to make Alex feel like they could actually do this. Like maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. Just then the sound of distant footsteps echoed through the building. Alex froze, his heart racing as he glanced at Lyra. She stood up quickly, her eyes wide with fear. "They're here," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Alex's mind raced. There was no way they could escape through the streets. No way they could outrun the shadows in the open. The building they were in had only one exit, and they had just heard footsteps coming from that direction. "What do we do?" Alex asked, his voice tense. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She closed her eyes for a moment as if sensing something. Then her eyes snapped open and she reached out to grab Alex's arm. "Come with me," she said urgently. "I know a way out, but we have to move fast." Alex nodded, not wasting any time. He followed her through the dark corridors of the building, trying to stay as quiet as possible. The sounds of the footsteps grew louder, closer. Alex could feel the panic rising in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had to, for Lyra. They turned a corner and entered another room, this one even darker than the last. Lyra moved quickly, pushing aside a piece of rotting metal to reveal a small hatch in the floor. She knelt down and opened it, revealing a narrow, hidden tunnel. "Down there," she said, her voice urgent. "It leads out of the building. We'll be safe once we're outside." Without hesitation, Alex dropped down into the tunnel, followed closely by Lyra. The hatch shut behind them with a soft thud, and they were plunged into darkness. Lyra's hand found his again, and she guided him through the tunnel with a steady hand. As they moved forward, Alex couldn't help but wonder how much longer they could keep running. The shadows were closing in, and sooner or later they would have to face them. But for now, the only thing that mattered was getting out, staying alive, and protecting Lyra. And maybe, just maybe, finding a way to stop the Empire that had already taken so much from her. The tunnel was cold and damp, the walls narrow and rough beneath Alex's hands. He could hear the sound of his breath echoing softly as he followed Lyra, trying to keep his pace steady in the dark. The only light came from the faint glow of Lyra's eyes, which flickered softly, guiding them through the underground passage. Alex's heart was pounding in his chest, but he kept his thoughts focused on one thing: getting out. The shadows were close. He could feel the weight of their pursuit pressing in on him, even in the darkness of the tunnel. He had no idea where it led, but he trusted Lyra. She had a way of sensing things, of knowing what to do when everything seemed impossible. "Are we close?" he whispered, though he wasn't sure she could even hear him over the sound of their footsteps. Lyra didn't answer at first, but after a moment she spoke softly. "We're almost there. We'll be out soon." Alex nodded, though his mind was racing with 1,000 questions. He had no idea what would happen when they reached the end of this tunnel. Was it just another hiding place, or did Lyra have some plan to confront the shadows? Was she ready for that? They walked for what felt like hours, the tunnel seeming to stretch endlessly before them. But at last they came to a small metal door, rusted with age. Lyra stopped in front of it, placing her hand on the surface. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if concentrating, and then pushed the door open with ease. The cool night air hit them immediately, and Alex stepped out into what looked like an old, overgrown alleyway. The city was still there, looming just beyond the buildings, but it felt miles away. It was a different part of the city, one that seemed abandoned, forgotten by time. Lyra stepped out after him, and the door clicked shut behind them. She turned to him, her expression serious. "We can't go back to the city," she said quietly. "They'll be looking for us there." Alex nodded. He understood. The shadows would search every inch of the city, and if they found any trace of Lyra, they wouldn't hesitate to strike. "Then where do we go?" he asked. Lyra paused for a moment, looking around the alley. "I know a place. It's far, but it's safe. We can hide there until we figure out what to do next." Alex didn't ask any more questions. He trusted her, even though there were so many things he didn't know. All he knew was that he couldn't leave her alone. Not now. Not after everything she had already been through. They began walking, keeping to the shadows as much as possible. The street was quiet, but Alex knew that silence didn't always mean safety. The shadows could be anywhere. He kept glancing over his shoulder, trying to see if anyone was following them, but it was hard to tell in the dim light. As they moved further away from the city, the streets grew emptier, the buildings older and more rundown. They passed through narrow alleys and along dark streets, the only sound the crunch of their footsteps on the pavement. Lyra led the way, her steps confident, though Alex could see the tension in her shoulders. She was still alert, still watching for danger, even though they were now out of the immediate danger zone. Eventually, they reached a small, secluded building. It was tucked away in a corner, hidden by tall fences and overgrown plants. It didn't look like much from the outside, but Alex could see that Lyra seemed to recognize it. She walked up to the door and knocked twice, softly but with purpose. The door creaked open, revealing a middle-aged woman with dark eyes and a sharp, watchful expression. She looked at Lyra for a long moment before stepping aside, allowing them inside without a word. The woman didn't say anything as she closed the door behind them, but her gaze shifted to Alex. He felt a little out of place, but Lyra didn't seem concerned. "This is Talia," Lyra said, introducing the woman. "She's someone I trust." Talia nodded curtly, then turned and led them into a small, dimly lit room. It was sparse but comfortable, nothing fancy, just a few chairs, a table, and a small bed in the corner. The air was thick with the smell of old books and something faintly floral. "Sit down," Talia said, her voice calm but firm. "You're safe here for now, but we don't have much time." Alex and Lyra sat at the table, and Talia pulled up a chair across from them. She studied them both for a moment before speaking again. "I've heard rumors about the shadows," Talia said, her voice low. "They've been searching for Lyra for a long time, and I know they won't stop until they get her." Lyra nodded, her expression grim. "They won't stop," she said quietly. "They want my power. They want me to help them destroy entire worlds, to bend the galaxy to their will." Talia leaned back in her chair, her fingers drumming lightly on the table. "I've been helping people like you for years, Lyra," she said. "I've seen what the shadows can do, and I've seen what happens when they get what they want, but we can't hide forever. Eventually, they'll find us." Alex shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He didn't know much about the shadows, but he had seen enough to know that they were ruthless. They would stop at nothing to get what they wanted, and Lyra's power was the key. "So what do we do now?" Alex asked, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. Talia looked at him. "We fight back," she said simply. Alex blinked, not expecting that answer. "Fight back? How?" Talia smiled faintly. "We have allies, we have people who don't want the shadows to win. People who will help us take them down, but it won't be easy." It never is. Lyra looked at Talia, her eyes filled with something Alex couldn't quite read. But we don't know who we can trust, Lyra said, her voice a little softer than before. The shadows have spies everywhere. We can't risk revealing ourselves to the wrong people. Talia nodded. That's true, but we'll need to take the first step. We need to find out who's on our side and who's working for them. Alex could see the resolve in Talia's eyes. She wasn't just a bystander. She was ready to fight too. I'll help, Alex said suddenly, surprising even himself. I don't know much about fighting, but I can't just stand by while this happens. Talia turned to him, her eyes sharp. Good, she said. We'll need all the help we can get. But you need to understand something, Alex. This isn't going to be easy. You're in this now. There's no turning back. Alex nodded. He understood. He had no choice now. He had made a promise to Lyra and he was going to keep it no matter what it took. We'll fight together, Alex said, his voice firm. We'll stop them. And just like that, the plan was set into motion. The fight for Lyra's freedom had begun. It wouldn't be easy, but Alex wasn't about to back down. Not now, not ever.